any changes. You know, if one person wants to close, the other one doesn't, we don't close. Everyone has to be in agreement. We are there to make sure that all parties are on the same page. So that's kind of what escrow is. That's our part in the transaction, basically, how we, you know, are party to. So terms you should know when you're in escrow. I know a lot of people always say amendments and addendums, and they get kind of confused on the difference. So addendums are a change to the term of your purchase agreement. Amendments are changes to my escrow instructions. It's always important anytime you make any change. I know a lot of people just want to email escrow and say, hey, add this change, or, you know, we're doing a credit, or now we're extending. I think it's extremely important that if you make any changes to your purchase agreement that's been fully executed, that not only I draw an amendment, but you draw an addendum to your contract. There are a lot of times when we go to fund or close escrow.
Yeah.
And
well, are you doing it? Doesn't seem like you are.
That are.
Can we have everyone mute yourself? Sorry.
Thanks, Kim. It's important to, because when we go to fund, there are plenty of times where I'm ready to fund the loan, and then out of nowhere, the lender wants to see an addendum to the contract because there was a change in the terms, in addition to my amendment. So it's important for both of us to be changing our documents so that everything lines up. You have addendums to your purchase, I have amendments to my escrow instructions. When it comes to the appraisal, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that. If there's a loan on the property, typically the lender will require an appraisal. I've seen a lot of files right now where I'm assuming due to COVID, there's a lot of lenders that are waiving appraisal requirements, which is nice. It does, you know, alleviate one more contingency that you don't have to worry about. But the appraisal is what determines the value of the property. The escrow company never gets a copy of this report unless there's an issue on the appraisal that needs to be addressed, like carbon monoxide detectors, or the price, you know, didn't come in at value. Sometimes they'll send that out to confirm that we are aware there was an issue on the appraisal that needs to be cleared. But other than that, the only person that gets a copy of that appraisal report is the buyer and the buyer's agent, if the buyer is willing to give that to them. There is no way for the lender to give it to us, the buyer to give it to us. It's a report they paid for, and they do not have to share it. Assumptions. So assumptions are very rare. We don't see a lot of them in escrow, but if the buyer wants to purchase a property that has a loan on it, this would mean that the buyer, and they want to assume the loan, the buyer would qualify for that assumption. It is a process. You have to go through that seller's bank to make sure that they'll allow you to assume the loan. Like VAs or FHAs, government loans, there is actually a clause in there that they cannot be assumed. But it is possible to do an assumption. It does not happen often, but again, that's something just to note as part of the escrow world. If you come across that with any clients, they have a buyer that wants to take the property and assume the loan, make the remaining balance as a payoff, you know, on the seller's behalf. That's something that can be done. Beneficiary, big important one. We use it a lot when it comes to account names, you know, lender names. The beneficiary is anyone receiving funds. So if the lender is the beneficiary on a loan, they're the person receiving funds. If we're the beneficiary on the earnest money deposit, we're the ones receiving those funds. So anytime you hear beneficiary, it's the person receiving funds. I have a lot of questions on that one. Close of escrow. So the date of close of escrow, I know buyers and sellers all the time, they're like, we funded the loan. Does that mean we're closed? No, it does not mean we're closed. Close of escrow is on the day that we have recorded. The day that title passes from seller to buyer, that is the date of close of escrow. Buyer becomes the legal owner, title insurance is effective, homeowner's insurance is effective, everything has been done. There is no going back once it's been recorded, and that's officially our close of escrow. Deed of trust. So again, when there's a loan on a property, that's something that's required to be recorded. So anytime you have a new loan, there's always a note, you know, there's the terms of the loan. In order for the bank to secure the note against the property, they have to record a deed of trust. This secures the lien against the property. It backs up the note to the bank. Something that we record in escrow. It's part of the loan documents when it comes from the lender. Everything gets signed all at the same time, and we make sure that it gets recorded at closing concurrent with grant deeds, any other documents that need to be recorded at the same time. Earnest money deposit, EMD. the acronym for that. So any earnest money deposit coming in is received by escrow. We typically see, on the purchase agreement, it's to be in within 3 business days of acceptance. It could be negotiated between buyer seller if you so choose. It does have on the contract that it's typically, or it's already standard written in there, that the EMD should be sent by electronic transfer or via wire. There is a lot of wire fraud out there, so please make sure to always tell your clients to communicate directly with their escrow officer or the escrow office when it comes to sending funds. I would completely remove yourself from that one, just because there's email hacking, there's security breaches. You just want to make sure you're not involved. And we as escrow, anyway, for me, I speak for myself, I always make sure to send my wire instructions and request to the earnest money deposit direct to the buyer when we open escrow. It also comes over in a secured email, again, to prevent any kind of fraud or email hacking. It's encrypted. So make sure your escrow companies are doing the same when you open escrow. You instruct them to reach out to the buyer direct for the EMD. Make sure that they send it encrypted if they're sending wire instructions. So hopefully there's everything secured in that email. And I would also advise your clients, even if they have all the wire instructions via email, to always call their escrow officer to verify everything prior to sending funds, just to ensure, again, security. Yes. So easements. Easements are typically always found on the preliminary title report. It's always good to look at what's on your prelim reports. Again, if you have questions on what's on the prelim report, talk to your title officers. I review the prelims. My escrow team reviews the prelims to make sure we're not missing out on anything that needs to be brought to attention or needs to be removed. But easements are rights or privileges for people to have access to the property at any time, really. Utility companies typically have easements, electric, gas. If they need to enter the property to check meters or do electrical, they have those rights through those easements on the property. So it's good to see who's got access to the property, or if there's easements between neighbors. That's also an important one to make sure you double check. And again, check with your title reps if you have any questions on what's on the prelim. If you don't know how to understand something that's on there, definitely always ask. You want to make sure, because you're going to be giving these reports to clients. I give them to the buyer, to the seller. If they have questions, you want to make sure you direct them to the right party, the right resource. When it comes to hazard insurance is required by the lender who's doing the buyer's loan. They require fire insurance, which is also known as hazard insurance or homeowner's insurance. They do not require earthquake typically, unless they know there's like a seismic hazard, natural disaster around the area. Flood insurance is only required if it's in a flood zone, and it has to be the FEMA zones. I believe it's A or B. And again, if the property is all cash, we can do a waiver and there's no hazard insurance required whatsoever. When it comes to determining how much hazard insurance the buyer is going to need, they should always talk to their lender. The lender is going to be the one requiring the premium and the coverage. So it's always good for them to discuss with the lender what coverage needs to be added. When it comes to HOAs, there are some HOAs that cover what's called walls in. So it's always good to check to see what the HOA offers when it comes to insurance and compare it to what the buyer may need. If there is HOA coverage, the buyer may need what's called an HO3 policy or an HO6 policy, depending on how much the HOA covers. So it's always good to check that out and make sure your clients are aware. We provide the homeowner's insurance information to the buyer and the lender, so everyone has a copy of it all. But when it comes to the company and the determination of coverage, that's not something that escrow would handle, but they should also talk to their lender. Impounds. So impounds are also known as an escrow account, and a lot of clients always get confused because they think escrow is holding their impounds, and that's just not the case. Lenders determine impounds. They just hopefully discuss with their clients if they do or don't want an impound account, or there are some loans that require an impound account. So the impound account is the lender's funds that they're holding, that the buyer is making every month and keeping to make their taxes and insurance payments for future, when they become due. So the lender determines how much to collect, and the lender tells us what to collect from the buyer and to give them for their initial deposit into that impound account. And then every month when the buyer makes their mortgage payment, they're paying, you know, what the lender has determined in addition to their principal and interest for taxes and insurance every month. And it's kept in their impound account, and then the lender will disperse to pay taxes and insurance when they're due. Their mortgage statements, I always tell clients, should always show how much is in their impound account, what the balance is, and when they're about to pay taxes or insurance when they become due. So they'll always be able to keep track of that. If a loan is ever paid off, and let's say your clients are asking questions or they're refinancing or something and their loan was paid and there's an impound account that was being kept by the lender, if that loan gets paid in full, the lender will reimburse the borrower for whatever funds are left in the impound account. I always tell clients to call your banks once it's been paid to make sure they have your phone number, your mailing address, your contact info, and make sure that they're processing that payment for them as soon as possible, because these banks will take their time when it comes to dispersing their impound accounts. They are in no hurry. So that's what impounds are, impound account, or also known as an escrow account. It's because the lender is escrowing the payments for the client. So that's where the confusion comes in. Legal description. So every property has a legal description. Always good to review the legal descriptions on your properties. On the preliminary title report is where this can be found. Again, if you have questions on a legal description, the title company should be able to help explain any questions you may have. If it's a homeowners association, a lot of times there's information in there that your clients may need. For example, parking spaces, parcels, you know, any common area, that might all be listed on the legal description. So always good to go through when you're looking for stuff. Also might list the unit number. Sometimes I have a file right now, for example, where the physical property has a unit number, but the legal description has a different unit number. So technically this property has 2 unit numbers. So it's good to always review them. Make sure you clear everything with title to make sure everything's accurate. Again, that's something escrow does, but it doesn't hurt to have a second eye, you know, to make sure everything looks good. Or if you have questions, to just always ask. Lien. So lien is the same as kind of like a deed of trust, anything that could be on the property. Judgments, child support. I just had an interesting lien for probation. It could be anything. Anything that could be recorded may not be attached to the property, but could be attached to the owner. So when you're in escrow and we're getting our preliminary title report and we're looking at all the liens and things that need to be paid through escrow, there are judgments that could come up. They could be for our owner, but if there's common names, sometimes they don't belong to our owner. So one of the important things to get from the sellers to clear those items that don't belong to them is their statement of information. When we send out our opening escrow package, that's the first thing we get. I do have a lot of realtors that as soon as they take their listings, they like to see what's on title, open a title report, just to make sure there's no surprises when we open escrow, if there are judgments or tax liens or anything that might be outstanding and not paid, just to make sure everything looks good and clear. Or if we know we need to order demands for these things, because we don't typically know the turnaround time until we place the order. Just depends on the county or the beneficiary of that lien. So always good to see what's on title and make sure that we clear everything. Mortgages, also the security repay. So that's also a deed of trust, kind of the same thing, also known as a mortgage, also known as a deed of trust, mortgage payoff. PITI, this is a lot of times seen in my counters, my contracts, as an acronym for principal, interest, taxes, insurance. So if the seller happens to be doing a rent back, usually the agent will request that the seller pays the buyer rent back at the rate of buyer's principal, interest, taxes, insurance, buyer's PITI. Whatever they're going to be paying for their mortgage, they would ask the seller to pay rent back, you know, like a per day, per diem type of fee. If you have an HOA on your property, a lot of people want to make sure that the HOA dues are included in that rent back to the seller. So just to keep that in mind if you are doing a rent back. Power of attorney. So the title companies usually would prefer to have a power of attorney that is specific to the property. When you're using a power of attorney, the way they have to sign is very specific. It's very long. When you're signing, like let's say it's Sally Smith signing for Mark Jacob, and Mark Jacob would have to, or wait, Sally's signing for Mark. So it would be a signature line that would read, Mark Jacob by Sally Smith as attorney in fact. And that is the signature for every time that person has to sign. And it has to be written exactly that way. With initials, if the client's initialing, it's also the same thing. So, you know, Sally signing for Mark, it would be MJ by SSAIF, attorney in fact. So if you're using power of attorneys, just make sure that the client knows how to sign, make sure they're signing correctly, and then make sure you get the original power of attorney. We have to record that power of attorney with the grant deed and all of our recording docs when we go to close escrow. A good way to make sure your power of attorney is going to be accepted by the title company is to have them review it before, you know, you open escrow, or have them review it when you open escrow, so there's no issues when you go to close. You want to make sure that title approves it, because like I said, they specifically will require either the property to be listed on the power of attorney or the legal description attached, or it has to have verbiage in there that they have the rights to sell and acquire property on behalf of this person. So good thing to always have title review it before you get too far into escrow and you have to get another one. So attorney and facts.
Hey, Sarah, before you start the next slide, do you want to see, you have quite a few people that joined us on Zoom, so they're all on mute. And I just want to remind them they can, if they have a question, they can put it in the chat box, or if they want to unmute themselves, maybe they can ask their question on what she's covered so far.
Feel free to interrupt me. Thanks, Kim. Quick claim deeds. So you can do quick claim deeds. When you're ever changing title, you can use a regular grant deed or a quick claim deed. If you're using interspousal deeds, you can kind of use any deed and it all will do the same thing. It just depends on the verbiage that you put in the document. When clients are asking for accommodation deeds, like if they call you up, I just want to add my daughter to title, I just want to add, there's huge liability when you're changing title to a property, so you want to make sure that either they talk to an attorney or they talk to escrow to make sure it's all accurate. You want to make sure names are spelled right. There's no title insurance when you're doing accommodation deeds. So that's why the liability is so high, because you don't want to make mistakes and then all of a sudden they're reassessed for taxes and it skyrockets because they changed title and they weren't aware. So if you do have clients that are looking to draw deeds just to change title, they're not doing escrow or selling or anything like that, they just want to add family or remove family or for whatever reason, I would have them talk to title or have them talk to escrow to make sure they know that they could be possible reassessment in property taxes when you change, if there's no exclusion or exemption for property tax reassessment. There are forms for that too. But anytime you do a deed and change title, you can quit claim, you can remove, you can add, you can change names if people get married and now they want to be husband and wife. You could Google grant deed, quit claim deed. They're all forms online that they could fill out. But when you go to open escrow, usually we have to go back and clean up those deeds that people do on their own. So it's good for them to talk to someone to make sure that the documents are being filled out correctly, make sure that they have R&T codes on them if they are recording deeds just outside of escrow. R&T stands for Revenue and Tax Code. Those are things, clauses that you would put on the document to make sure that they know it's exempt from county transfer tax for whatever reasons. Could be, change of a name. It could be transfer into a trust, transfer out of a trust. There's a list of things. If anyone needs the list of R&T codes, I'd be happy to provide that. I'll put my email back on the screen and my phone number in case anyone needs that. But yeah, R&T codes are always good to have. So, and again, talk to title, talk to escrow if you have questions about changing title. Funding. So funding is the process when buyer's loan has funded or when we receive all the buyer's funds if it's all cash. All the funds on a loan from the buyer go to the title company. Everyone always might think that, oh, escrow has received the funds from the lender. No. When the lender funds the loan, the funds go to the title company. Title company makes payoffs, pay taxes, liens, anything that needs to be, anything that's recorded on the property, title will make those payoffs. And then whatever's left over, seller's proceeds, miscellaneous disbursements, escrow fees, those all come to us and then we disperse after that. A recording, like I mentioned earlier, the filing of all of our documents at the county recorder's office. I know when it comes to recordings right now, the county is still closed to the public. LA County is not doing specials yet. So if you do have, just as another side note, sorry, I keep probably having sidebars on some of these things, but I've had a lot of people come to me lately needing like accommodation deeds recorded or things changed. If you guys have clients needing things recorded or you yourself need something recorded, I would try to see if you could get to your title companies to see if they can help. Just because right now, if you need something recorded outside of escrow, you have to mail in the document. It does take a long time. Like I have one file right now, it's been 3 months and we're still waiting for a grantee, a title transfer deed to be recorded. So I would talk to your title companies if there's anything they can do to help you send in those documents to the county. I mean, they may not be able to, but with the county being closed to the public, everything is just being sent snail mail. So it is taking longer. So if you do have to send it in snail mail, just keep that in mind. It will take a while for documents to be recorded just direct to the county because they are going in by the mail. So just a sidebar. Okay. This is my flow chart for life of a transaction for escrow. So when you guys get your purchase agreements all negotiated, counteroffers, addendums, everything signed, that's when the listing agent, the selling agent, whoever's opening escrow, I have my buyer's agents a lot of the time put our escrow company in the contract requesting us to be the escrow holder. So I do get escrows from both sides, listing agents and buyer's agents. So whoever's opening the escrow will send it in to us. When you send in your escrows to open, it's good to give us all the information as much as possible. Even if you think it might not even matter, I would give us as much information as possible when we open so we can get the ball rolling. So information we may need: your client's contact information, the other agent's contact information, the commission percentage, what is the listing agent getting, what's the buyer's agent getting, which title companies you want us to open with, who to give credit to for that title company, where to send your client's documents. Does the client live at the property? Do they have their mail sent to work? You know, where do you want us to send all the client's docs, or how? Or do you want us to send them to you directly and then you'll meet with the client, you know, however you want? Or if you want them to schedule them to come into the office and want us to make an appointment, let us know what works best with your clients so we can just accommodate that. If the property has an HOA, it's super important because I know you guys have contingencies for those HOA documents. So most, I want to say 99% of most homeowners associations, they require those fees for the document order to be placed up front. They typically accept credit cards. There are some out there that only take cashier's checks or money orders. So if you do have an upcoming listing and you know it has an HOA, you can feel free to reach out to escrow. I always help my agents let them know, like, hey, here's the cost, here's the turnaround time. So you're aware and you can put that into your contingency period when you know you need to have the docs ordered. And seller will have to give a credit card or cashier's check or money order, you know, depending on what the HOA requires. Please make sure you let these clients know. I've had so many files lately with HOA doc fees that they are high. Like I just had a client, their HOA, they actually had 2 HOAs, a master HOA, a sub HOA, and the cost to the seller was $1,300 they had to pay on credit cards to order their HOA documents. So it's a big fee sometimes. You want to make sure the sellers are aware so they're not shocked or upset when they find out they have to fork up, you know, $800 to pay for HOA doc fees. It can range from $300 to $1,000. It just depends on the property and the HOA and how we get docs from them. So if you have questions or you need to know about HOAs and portals to how to order docs, just let us know. But we do like to get that up front. And it's also good to double check that there are 2 HOAs or if there's one. Depends, you know, again, on the property. So make sure to find all that information out. Give us all the contact info. We'll order the docs and we'll make sure that the buyer gets a copy of them. But we do need the contact information, name of the HOA, the management company, you know, to get us started. Buyer submits deposit to escrow. So as I mentioned before, it's typically 3 days after acceptance that escrow receives the EMD. If I don't receive the EMD within the first 24 or 48 hours, if I haven't gotten a hold of the buyer, I'll make sure to reach out to my agents. You as agents can also check into to follow up with us to make sure we got it. As I said, we send the EMD wire instructions via encryption. We also send the receipts via encryption, so the buyer's account information remains secure. So if you have questions on submitting the escrow deposit, let us know. Wires are always preferred just because it's electronic. It's immediately in our account. There's no hold on the checks or anything like that. And then with COVID, it's a lot easier for the client, so they don't have to go to the bank and get a cashier's check, or they don't have to come in to drop off anything. So, but whatever is convenient for the client, we're happy to accommodate. We just don't take cash. That's the only thing. Escrow holder, we open title with our title company that you've chosen. So you let us know which rep it is. Usually takes 3 to 5 days for the report to come in. As soon as we have the report, we'll send it with all of our escrow documents, make sure everybody has a chance to see it, review it, look at it, make sure the buyer signs approval off that termite report or the title report. We prepare our escrow instructions, make sure we double check the property address, the legal description, make sure that all gets added in our escrow documents. Same with the buyer to make sure that they get a pre-approval letter, any PCORs, anything the buyer needs to sign. We prep packages for both sides and the realtors and our broker escrow packages. Once we get all of our packages back from seller and buyer, we'll prep things to go back to you guys. I know a lot of you need the seller FERPDA for your file, or like the signed prelim approval, signed buyer approval for HOA docs, things that you guys might need for your files. As soon as we get the documents back, we send those out. And then as soon as we get the seller's statement of information, we also send that to title so they can hopefully clear the seller's name if there's any liens, judgments, or anything that might not belong to them. Again, what I had mentioned before, we review that report, we review the easements, the judgments, the CC&Rs. We also make sure that there's no other HOA on the property that we're not aware of, liens, titles. And if there's something that stands out to us, we'll make sure to reach out to you, the realtors, to let you know, like, hey, did you know there's this lien on here? Is the seller aware? There's this judgment. Is there 2 HOAs? You gave me 1 HOA info, but there seems to be a second one on title. Because anytime there's CC&Rs are always recorded on the title property. So you can always go back to CC&Rs to see the name of the HOA as well. And as I mentioned, the statement of identity, statement of information goes to title so they can abstract it and clear that person's name. So we don't have any surprises when we go to close at any, because even if there's something, like I said, that's not recorded against the property and it might be recorded in their name, if they run that statement of information and let's say they have a judgment from an old credit card, we'll have to pay that through escrow if it comes up when they run the SI, and we have to order a payoff demand. And I don't know the turnaround time for something like that. So it's important to get the clients to turn back all their documents as fast as possible so we can get these things cleared. Like I said, escrow will order payoff demands for anything that's on title, anything that we're paying off, through the escrow, that gets ordered from us. We go back and forth with the lender on any updates. We'll send out updates to you as well when we've heard that there's loan approval, when we've heard that the CD has gone out, when we expect loan documents. Anytime we hear updates from the lender, we'll send those updates to you as well. We review all the demands that come in. We make sure all the fees get balanced in the escrow, make sure all the charges are in. If there happens to be fees that you guys know need to be paid through escrow that aren't typical, like sometimes I get staging invoices, or sometimes I get plumber invoices, or things for repairs that are done. If there's invoices that need to get paid through escrow, make sure to get them to your escrow officer as soon as possible so anything gets disclosed and we don't miss anything when we get to closing. So always good to review your client's estimates to make sure that if there's anything missing, you let us know, hey, I need to add this, or this is missing, and we'll add it right away. So we don't run short, we make sure all the charges are in. So anything that needs to be paid through escrow, make sure to let us know. Again, we work on processing with the lender any conditions. So when we open escrow, the lender will usually give us a list of things that they need: closing protection letters, prelim reports, EMD receipts, vesting, insurance, like the things that the lender may need. It's usually a long list, and we'll make sure to process all that, get it back to the lender as soon as possible. Again, the sooner we get docs back from the clients, the sooner we can finish processing some of that stuff too. Like for the buyer, most important thing for the lender is insurance and vesting. So if you have a buyer, make sure they know who they're going to use for homeowners insurance when they open escrow, or to get them to start shopping for whichever insurance company they want to use. Maybe give them a referral or recommendation just so they can get a couple quotes and know who they're going to go with, because that's something the lender will need to clear as a condition. Again, we'll review all the documents in our file. We audit everything. We order the insurance for the buyer once we know who they're going with. If you guys have termite on the contract, make sure to send us the termite reports, the completions. Let us know when the repairs are going to be done so we have an idea. Make sure we have everything in by the time we close. Once we receive loan documents, we start auditing everything and making sure, usually in the loan documents, there may be something for the seller to sign. So once we have those docs, we prep all of our final docs for all parties to sign. We make arrangements for the buyer to sign those loan documents with a notary, either with us here at the office, with a mobile notary. We send out the demands to the seller, estimate to the seller, any final docs to the seller to sign, usually via DocuSign. None of those have to be live signed, but the buyer does have to sign loan documents with a notary. So once the buyer has signed docs, with the docs, they are provided the final balance to close. That's our final balance. I have a lot of times people want to know the balance when we open escrow, or they want to know the balance a couple weeks before we close escrow. But the CD has changed so many times. By the time we get the loan documents, we try to let buyers know, like, I won't have a final dollar amount until I know that the CD is either final or until I have the loan documents, because the lender is constantly making changes to that CD. So we're constantly balancing to them, and we just want to make sure we don't run short. But once the buyer sends us funds, we request funding from the lender. Once everything's been signed, received, and everything's been reviewed, the lender will send us conditions for funding. So if we send the docs to the lender, they're going to come back and say, you're missing a receipt, or, oh, we need this signed, or we need the seller's CD, which is a big one. I know the seller will DocuSign their estimate and their closing disclosure, the CD, and that's usually one of the funding conditions. So on a listing side, if you're getting seller's docs to sign, make sure you get that CD signed. If you're on the buyer's side, you don't have to, or make sure that the buyer signs everything with their loan docs. Once we know that the loan has officially funded, the funder will let us know that the wire has been sent. We notify everyone on the transaction, fund lender has officially funded. Or if it's all cash, we let everybody know that the buyer's funds are in, all of the docs have been signed, that we are ready to go. And then we release the file for recording with the title company. So we'll call in to release the documents to go down to the county. If it's LA County, Orange County, Riverside, the cutoff time to release for recording for the next day or for same day is 3:30 p.m. So if we don't have everything we need in by 3:30 p.m., you will not be able to record same day or the next day. Sometimes right now, because title is so busy, they can extend it a little bit, maybe 4 o'clock, but I mean, it depends on the title company, depends on what they have on their desk, but typically you wanna make sure everything is in by 3:30 to make sure you meet that recording cutoff. LA County cannot fund and record same day, so that goes the next day. Orange County, Riverside, San Diego County, they all go same day if you need a record special. San Bernardino, all those counties go same day. LA County is usually just the one local county that does not go special same day. So,
Sarah, you have a question? This is a general question.
sure.
It's how do we choose an escrow company for our business? Which factors set one escrow company apart from the others? And how do agents choose?
Oh, that is a good question. I mean, it's good to build a relationship with your escrow officer. I think you definitely want to make sure someone who's got experience and who you can rely on. The communication is so important too, to make sure you have someone that's responsive. I know a lot of realtors, this is just something too in general, have been getting, like just yesterday, I got a message from one of my realtors. It was a picture that his seller got from an escrow company offering a flat rate escrow fee of like $300 or something like that. And I've had one of my realtors actually use one of those companies that they're getting these, bombarded with flat rate escrow fees for like less than 500 bucks. And she said it was the worst escrow she's ever had. She said there were so many errors, mistakes on the documents. The clients were upset. She said it was just a nightmare transaction. And I feel like those kind of things are what you get what you pay for, I mean, the only way you're really going to know, I think, how the escrow holder works is when you work with them. So maybe meet some escrow officers, meet a couple that, or have a chat with them, to see how they process, how they work, how their system is, I would ask, like, when we open, do you send an open email? Do you follow up with the EMD? Like, what's your system? What are your steps? What are your procedures? Maybe then you can get an idea of how this person works. When it comes to escrow fees, most escrow companies are pretty comparable. So like for myself, my fees, I've worked with a couple different escrow companies, and I've called into a couple different escrow companies. I have friends that work at other escrow companies. So I try to make sure that my fees are comparable to all my competitors that are at least around me. I try to stay right around fees when it comes to making sure I'm not trying to short myself for all the work I'm doing, and to make sure I stay fair with everyone that's around me. So I think typically escrow fees are $2 per thousand at the $500 base. There are some escrow fees that do charge a lot of miscellaneous fees. It just depends. But I would try to get an idea of your escrow officer, how she works, the systems that she uses, the steps she does. The communication is always key. Maybe ask some of those escrow officers for some seller net sheets. My agents are always asking me for net sheets to get an idea of fees, costs. I try to get my net sheets out within an hour. That's my own, personal commitment. So I think it just depends on the person you're dealing with and how they're going to work. You might need to just give them an escrow to try to see how it works. But the escrows that offer those flat rates, I don't know how they work, and if they they charge the seller a flat, they may charge the buyer more to make up the difference. I don't know, but from what I've heard, those escrow companies aren't great as far as I've heard from experience. I don't know if that helps answer that question.
No, you did great. You did great.
Okay. Escrow. So like I said, any conditions that come in, escrow will provide this to the lender. We request funding. Sending the funds to title, as I mentioned earlier, that's when the title or lender will wire to title. We make sure all the documents for recording get reviewed too. The title company is ultimately also the one reviewing everything finally before it actually goes to close. And then escrow is the one who will email everybody once we've officially recorded and confirmed. And then just keep in mind, when we confirm, we don't have the money right away. We have to wait for title to wire us those funds. I always tell people within 24 hours, funds will be issued, because it depends on the time that we record. Sometimes recording can happen at 8 a.m. I've had recordings come in at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evening. So at that time, we can't really disperse anything, and we're usually waiting for a wire from title. But we'll disperse it the very next morning. So within 24 hours, funds will be completely dispersed on an escrow. So yeah, we issue final closing statements to the buyer, to the seller, issue all of our closing docs to all parties. If there's anything else you guys need for your files, just feel free to let us know. Hopefully that kind of helps show you guys the start to end of the escrow side of the transaction. Again, if there's anything I may have missed, or if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm happy to answer. I can go back to, my beginning screen. So here's my phone number. That's my direct line, my email address. If there's anything you guys need, please feel free to reach out. I have a great team. Maricela and Karina are my assistants, and they're also well-knowledge in escrow. So if I can't answer, they're also there with me as my backup, and they'll be happy to answer any questions as well. So.
Okay, let's just wait a minute. I know sometimes on Facebook there can be a little bit of a lag, so I just want to make sure if someone has a question that we catch it. But I don't see any questions in the chat box.
Nothing?
No, you did such a thorough job.
Oh, great. I tried.
Yeah, so, okay. I'm not seeing any questions. So thank you, Sarah.
Oh, you're
That
so
was
welcome.
awesome.
Thank you for everyone that joined. I know I can't see you, but hopefully I'll one day meet you. And like I said, if there's anything you need, just let me know.
I will.
All righty.
Oh. We have one realtor back here. She'll let me know.